Rukmini. Devi is world famous, and we are just so blessed to have her living here in close by the temple. She met Srila Prabhupada when she was 16, got initiated, right, when you were 16, and has been very involved in ISKCON, serving his mission since that time. Now she's just, I think, turning 30, so it's not been so long. Just joking. So amazing services over the years. She's just a beautiful teacher, speaker, writer, artist, and she's speaking today on a topic called Radical Personalism, which is actually an initiative going on across North America, again, to try to help us remember how we really are worshiping Krishna as a person, of course, and each other, taking care of each other. So radical personalism, and please give a very warm welcome to Rukmini Devi.
Thank you so much for inviting me. Thank you for being here today. Shri Chaitanya Manavistam Sapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Sapadam Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhakti Vedanta Swamini Srinamane Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Sanyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Mukham Karoti Vachalam Sangalam Vaiteti Yakripas Bande Shri Gurun Dinatatam Panchakapatarabhyascha Vipashindu Vaikucha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Rama. Thank you all so much for being here. So as Ananda said, I'm part of a small cohort of devotees who've been discussing the idea of radical personalism. So what do we mean by that? What's a good working term? What working definition for the term? So here's a definition I like. It's a little long, so bear with me here. Try to trim it down a bit. Radical personalism is the revolutionary idea that asserts, above all else, the personhood of all humans, other living beings, and the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Sri Krishna. A culture of radical personalism creates a nurturing, loving environment that honors the integrity of every living being and demands its members to create a culture of compassion, care, mutual respect, integrity, spiritual understanding, personal growth, and unity in diversity. Do you like the definition? It's a nice ideal to aim for, right? So, yeah, so in Srila Prabhupada's own pranam mantra, Namaste Saraswati Devi, that we chanted, that he himself wrote, Prabhupada wrote that himself, he composed it. One purpose of his mission is mentioned prominently, that he's preaching the message of Lord Chaitanya Deva and delivering the Western countries which are filled with impersonalism and voidism. So what about you? Do you sometimes see, like I do, some kind of impersonalism lurking in your heart? or your meant to be personal dealings? Have you ever felt unseen somewhere at some time? Have you ever felt unheard when you've been trying to share your thoughts or feelings? Or do you ever feel that sometimes you've chosen to not see something in yourself as a sort of blind spot, something others may see in you? Or have you ever chosen to not hear some inner or outer guidance from Krishna within, or from others who may be trying to help you or offer you some wisdom or guidance? So I want to share a story that I love very much. Haridas, I'm sure you know this story. This is a story about Satsvarupa Das, who's now Satsvarupa Das Goswami. And this is a story from when he was a young brahmachari. He was every week doing some typing service for Srila Prabhupada. And at the end of the week on Friday nights, he would bring that completed work to Srila Prabhupada's apartment. This is in New York City. And so at that time, the very first initiation was organized, and he was invited to be one of those initiates, but he felt very unqualified. He felt very humble that he wasn't really qualified, that he wanted to do his service. And so he skipped out on that initiation, and then he showed up the next day or the next couple of days to bring Prabhupada this typing work. So when Srila Prabhupada greeted him at the door of his apartment, he was grateful, he took the typing work, and then he looked at this young brahmachari and he said, "If you love me, I'll love you." It's such a beautiful story. So let's unpack this a little bit. What was going on here? The young disciple wanted to offer his service, but he had not yet come to be able to offer his heart. And Srila Prabhupada was offering an exchange of love. If you love me, I'll love you. Or how painful is it when a person comes to one of our temples for the first time, and or even many times, and no one speaks to her or to him, you know? Or maybe someone makes an assumption about a devotee or guest based on bodily discrimination or prejudice. One dear devotee serving with great dedication in one of our temples, she's Black, of African descent, and someone of another culture said to her, "What are you doing here? This is not your religion." How painful, yeah? So of course, we're all individual persons, and we all see things from different points of view as persons. Thank you. I'm sure I'll knock it over, so let me just take a little drink and give it back to you.
I'll put it over here.
Okay. Yeah, so we're all persons, which means we all see things, we all have different points of view. As persons aspiring for the spiritual path of bhakti, loving devotional service. But can we learn to honor our differences in a mood of unity and diversity? That's my big question here. Srila Prabhupada emphasized the primacy of the person of Krishna as the supreme personality of Godhead. And we all know Krishna has personal and impersonal energies, right? But Srila Prabhupada placed equal emphasis on the personal identity of the individual, eternal individual souls ourselves, eternally persons in relationship to that supreme person. So it's interesting that the term personalism in the West first appeared in print in 1799. And there are many different versions of this school of thought, but it's really kind of, they vary. So it's kind of best to call it a worldview that emphasized the importance of human persons in the sense that this is what they said. They said the real is the personal, which I think is really beautiful. Like that, the real is the personal. So it was a reaction, the school of thought was a reaction to the depersonalizing elements in industrialization, the Industrial Revolution, Darwinism, and Aristotle's definition of man as the quote unquote rational animal. Maybe you've heard that before. It was about the dignity of the person about consciousness, free will, and about community, and how as persons we exist in relationship and never in isolation. And this personalist school of thought inspired Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. when he was a doctoral student at Boston University. And it inspired his work in recognizing and uplifting the dignity of every person and in seeing our interdependence and developing the idea of what he called, he didn't coin the term, but he popularized the term, the beloved community. Have you heard that before? The beloved community. It's a beautiful phrase. So Srila Prabhupada in his writings, lectures, and his personal dealings, I'd say he boldly beat the drum of a radical personalism that was inclusive of all living beings. And in many places in his Bhaktivedanta purports, Srila Prabhupada talks about how an impersonal worldview actually encourages material desires, exploitation, and also material entanglement. Think about it, right? If the world is impersonal, if nobody's watching, if nobody really cares what you or I or anyone else does, then who cares? We can do any darn thing, and why not, right? Albert Einstein said that if we think that the universe is neither friendly nor unfriendly, and that God is essentially playing dice with the universe, then we're simply victims of the random toss of the dice, and our lives have no real purpose or meaning. But, he said, that if we decide that the universe is a friendly place, then we will use our technology, our scientific discoveries, and our natural resources to create tools and models for understanding that universe. Because power and safety will come through understanding its workings and motives. So it seems he considered the practical importance of seeing the universe as a friendly place. Actually, I think we've been given an imperative by Srila Prabhupada to exemplify personalist interactions in our ISKCON society through the 6 loving exchanges Srila Rupa Goswami talks about in his Nectar of Instruction. And in Srila Prabhupada's purport to verse number 4 of that book, Srila Prabhupada says that his ISKCON society has been established to facilitate the 6 loving exchanges between devotees. So what are those 6 loving exchanges? Offering gifts in charity, accepting charitable gifts. Anybody know any? You know one? You want to raise? Anyone want to raise their hand? I said 2. Offering gifts in charity, accepting charitable gifts.
Sharing your heart.
Yeah, nice. Sharing your heart and confidence. Yes.
Exchange of gift. Prashadam.
Prasadam. So giving and receiving prasadam, revealing your mind in confidence, and hearing someone also reveal some confidential thoughts. So those are the 6 exchanges. It's beautiful. So what would it look like to prioritize in more radical ways our first and foremost identity of ourselves as persons in relationship to Krishna, the Supreme Person, and all living beings as his beloved parts and parcels? Can I more consciously try to see and hear what others are going through, where they're coming from, or what someone's need right now in the present moment? These are kind of questions to ask yourself, questions that I need to ask myself. Can I try to care more carefully and listen more deeply in my exchanges with family or other devotees, or with friends or co-workers at the office? And could this type of awakened consciousness create a sea change in our ISKCON culture, a culture of radical personalism, or the beloved community that Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. described? Such a beautiful vision, isn't it? The idea of the beloved community. Wow. So Srila Prabhupada in his purports, in his letters, lectures, and personal dealings, he gave this vision. And the vision of our Vaishnavacharyas goes way beyond the famous United Nations Declaration of Human Rights. Because as a radical personalism, it's not only limited to humans, but it's inclusive of all living beings. So as aspiring devotees on the path of bhakti, I think it's urgent that we walk our talk, live our ideals, and not just remain philosophically in the headspace. It all needs to sink down deep into the heart space as well. Because why? Because real knowledge needs to transform our hearts for our betterment, for the benefit of the world, and for the upliftment of the people of the world as well. So devotees this little boy is very enthusiastic. I noticed when he came to the temple this morning, he had such a huge smile on his face when he walked in the door. It was, I think, wow, look at that smile. So yeah, devotees are philosophers, right? But have you ever heard the saying that your actions speak so loudly, I can't hear a word you're saying? So it's really important that deep knowledge we're receiving does sink deeply down into the heart space. One young devotee once asked Srila Prabhupada, how can I serve you? And Srila Prabhupada said, you can go where I will not go. And the devotee was so bewildered because Srila Prabhupada had just been to Japan, San Francisco, Texas, Chicago. Now he was at New Vrindavan, he's on his way to New York and London and Germany. And so he was really bewildered. He said, but Prabhupada, where is it that you won't go? And Srila Prabhupada just shot back. He said, to the future. And by the way you treat the people there, they will know how much Krishna loves them. Isn't that beautiful? By the way you treat the people there, they will know how much Krishna loves them. So I think this is Srila Prabhupada's radical personalist challenge to all of us. Srila Prabhupada is throwing down the gauntlet to his followers. How do we live and how do we treat the others that we meet in the world? Do our actions convince the people of the world that Krishna loves them? Do we live and demonstrate that love ourselves? This would be radical personalism. And this should be in my opinion anyway, the hallmark of what it means to be a devotee. If we make this consciousness our shared lived reality, a living love, then this radical personalism can set our ISKCON society apart from others who live and think in more polarized and sectarian ways. This kind of vibrant, transformed way of being would be world-changing and would reinvigorate the Krishna consciousness movement, would endear us to Srila Prabhupada, would attract the hearts of people we meet, would bring us closer to each other as sacred persons, beloved to Lord Shri Krishna, the Supreme Person himself. So this is my question to myself and to all of us. Is radical personalism possible for us to live today? I really believe that it has to become integral and intrinsic to the values and ethics of our devotional lives. And I mean that in three ways. First of all, in our own introspection. Second of all, in our dealings between ourselves and other devotees. And third, in the way we interact with the world at large. I think this consciousness is essential if we want to create the revolution of consciousness that Srila Prabhupada envisioned, as stated in the Srimad Bhagavatam verse, a revolution in the impious lives of this world's misdirected civilization. So thank you so much. These are my thoughts on the ideal of radical personalism. Thank you. Hare Krishna. So what do you all think? Do you have some reflections back? Is it possible? Do you have objections or questions, or what's a takeaway for you, maybe?
I think there's a lot of opportunity, like while you're doing service, right? Because someone has to be standing next to you to relate. So sometimes when you're doing service, you have a chance to walk. There are different spaces. There's public spaces, private spaces.
You want to give a mic? There's public spaces and private spaces. You were saying when we're doing service, there's someone next to us. We have an opportunity to talk or to share thoughts.
Yeah, and so we have chances to share our minds. We have chances to share our minds in more intimate spaces. And public, we should be public. But, we have opportunities in emotional service, like actually doing service. But maybe there could be more kinds of service, or I don't know, because it would be cool to kind of go from station to station and like see what people are interested in and what they're naturally inclined to.
Like at a festival, like one of the festivals we have here when there's so many booths.
Yeah, like all those booths and just all kinds of activities. I mean, with Krishna consciousness, you can do so much. It's like there's not so much restriction as people think, but like everybody has their own inclination. It gives you some kind of clue as to what they like and what they might like to do.
And their own gifts. And yeah. So your proposal is that we have a festival, more festivals, every day.
More festivals.
Prabhupada said once, I could give you a festival for every day.
But I like
You'll give Ananda a big headache.
but like we have the kitchen and we have the garden and we have the cows. So there's so much opportunity to do different things. Maybe there could be more things. I don't know. You guys have been around and you're creative. So.
Thank you. So even if you're doing service or you're walking down the street and there's nobody with you, there's still Krishna, that beloved person in your heart that you can talk to and say, help, I'm trying my best, but I'm not getting it, or whatever you want to say, So in a sense, we're always in the company of a person somewhere that first Chaitya grew in our hearts, Krishna, or the other people around us. I'm reminded of a story that we used to have a store on Rockville Pike, and one of our employees who was a devotee went into the grocery store that was in the same center and was dealing very rudely with the cashier in line. And one of our employees who was not a devotee saw this, and she came to me and she was so surprised. She said, "This is a devotee? I thought devotees are supposed to be such nice people, gentle, kind, generous." And she was so shocked to see that a devotee was, behaving like that.
Did she have an administrative personality?
She was just like, being rude to the cashier. So, the way we treat everyone, right? Not just our boss, not just our beloved family, but how do we treat the elevator operator, or the garbage man, or the, everybody, the insects. This is bhakti consciousness that we're supposed to be imbibing. Right?
I have a follow-up question to that then, because we're people and we're not always perfect, right? And so either we may have a bad day, treat somebody badly, or somebody may have a bad day and treat us badly. So awareness, tolerance, forgiveness, how do we aspire to be the best, but also realize that sometimes we're not, and how do we make space for others to have those failings from time to time?
Yeah, that's a great
question. Ourselves up after we have those failings.
Yeah, that's a great question. You and I had something the other day that I came here, and it was really important to me as a guest who comes here, who doesn't live here, that there be toilet paper in the bathroom. That was really important to me. And I was saying, well, I'll get it myself if someone just tells me where it is, and then I just need the key to the big rolls in the bathroom so I can put it in. But nobody seemed to know where the key was, And meanwhile, Ananda's thinking of this new temple she's building. She's got meetings with architects. She's got this, she's got that. She's got all these things going on with this new construction. And she was, on another page. So what do? I think to understand that someone else that I'm exchanging with is going through something in their own life that maybe I don't see. I'm not aware of the struggles that, there's another story. Let me share a really beautiful story with you. There's a story about a man. He was on a subway, very quiet New York subway, early Sunday morning. No one was on the subway car. He was just being thoughtful, quiet. And then this other man got on the subway car, the empty subway car, with his 2 kids. And the 2 kids were just running wildly up and down the subway car, back and forth, making all kinds of noise. And this first man was getting kind of annoyed. And he said to the other man, he said, "Sir, please control your children." And the man was kind of lost in thought. And he looked up and he said, "Oh, I'm so sorry. We just come from the hospital where the mother just died." So, here the one man's thinking, "You're so rude. You're not paying attention to your wild kids running around." But he didn't realize what this man and his children were going through. So what do you do in a situation where you feel like, okay, like, as I say, Ananda and I had this just the other day. So I think what you do is the next time you see that person, you can just say, "I'm just so sorry for, whatever it was that you did, for me being so insistent that why is there no toilet paper?" Whatever it was. So, just never underestimate the power of an apology, because, we don't know what the other person is going through. And this is a difficult world. There's been so much suffering the past year, 2 years, right? So much suffering, so much illness, so many challenges. People have lost their jobs. Some people are having trouble paying rent. Now there are these Afghan refugees coming into the US with nowhere, to a brand new country with nothing. So we have to try to see from the other person's POW, right? Point of view, POV, point of view, and be forgiving and apologize, And even if you feel like, whoa, Ananda was a little rough to me today, but you can go and apologize and say, hey, hey, I'm sorry for, whatever my part of that was, because Kunti Devi in her prayers, she says that the troubles, sufferings of the living entities are due to social intercourse, just like bamboos, just rubbing together in a forest. Sometimes they ignite and make a forest fire. And there's another something that's really beautiful. I should stop yakking and leave time for more questions, but there's another something really beautiful that comes from the Catholic tradition, that they say that rocks that are on the bank of a river can be very sharp and jagged, but when they're in the river, in the flow of the river, but just by interacting with other rocks, they become smooth and they become shiny. So living in community, that's a metaphor for living in community. That, oh, thank you for helping me. Thank you for smoothing out my jagged edges, because thank you for helping me see myself a little better. So we can become smooth and shiny by living in community and honoring the gifts of being corrected in community, or helping to see ourselves a little better through community. So what else? Are there questions or reflections or takeaways or anything? What do you think, Haridas? We have a wise man among us. Oh. I'm trying to learn deep listening from my God brother Haridas. Anybody have any thoughts? Sarama.
Hare Krishna.
Very well.
I heard it a few times from different devotees, this argument of like many devotees that are kind of very strict, and then the comment on like what you said, unity in diversity, and usually argument is like, oh, Prabhupada was very strict and he said this, and then like as contra argument on that idea, like we should actually see broader vision and cooperate and see whatever somebody else can do. Maybe it's not up to standard. But I hear a lot of this argument of like from this, what would I say, conservative part, that like, oh no, it has to be up to here, it has to be this strict. This is not acceptable. If you can elaborate on that.
Well, try to set an example yourself. I think a wise devotee, a devotee who's advanced in Krishna consciousness, is very strict with themselves, but also very tolerant of others, very lenient with others. And if you're in a position of a managerial position, then you can always be encouraging people. The best way to, get beautiful service done is by encouragement, So, sometimes someone cooks the Rajbhog offering for 6 years or 8 years and nobody said anything until the day that they put salt instead of sugar. You made such an offense. So it's best. I'll tell you another Prabhupada story. There was a time when I was a young devotee in Boston, and there was one lady cooking for Srila Prabhupada. She was an excellent cook, but she didn't put, I think it was too much salt. I think she put too much salt. She double salted. She'd forgotten that she'd salted and put double salt. So Prabhupada didn't say anything when he was given the prasadam. He didn't comment at all. But when the devotees received the Mahaprasadam, they all were jumping down her throat. Oh, you made such an offense. The salt is double. You made such an offense to Prabhupada. This is terrible. So then the next day, because she really was a brilliant cook. So the next day she cooked so nicely and everything was perfect. And so on the second day, she was also quite a proud person. She was quite proud, I would say. And so the Prabhupada didn't say anything, but then the following day, when he got that nice prasadam, he said, oh, prasadam is so nice. Yesterday was a little salty. But, so you can catch more bees with honey, right? So, yeah, I think that's really the answer. Be strict with myself and be encouraging to others. Not ready. Sometimes someone comes to the temple for the first time and we're all ready to say, don't stick out your feet. Don't do this and don't do that and don't do this. And if someone talks to them, sometimes that's what they get. Sometimes nobody talks to them. Sometimes you hear someone say, oh, I came to the temple 6 years ago, but nobody talked to me, so I haven't come back. Once we had in Denver, we were in the Denver temple. We had a man from the city that was coming to do some inspection. And Anuttama Prabhu said to him, oh, have you ever been here before? He said, yeah, I was here a few years ago and somebody called me a demon. He was working for the city. So, be gracious and try to share the precious gifts that we've received, not through bitter medicine, but through sweetness. Hope that's not too sentimental. Anybody else have any thoughts?
Please take advantage of having Rukmini Devi with us and ask a question on the topic or any question you might like to ask her about spiritual life or spiritual growth.
Maybe,
Prabhupada.
yeah, maybe you think what I'm proposing is impossible, Maybe you think, well, we're all from different cultures and this is really impossible and Prabhupada was Prabhupada, but we can't really do that. But I think, as I said, I think he's throwing down the gauntlet. If we want to create this revolution of consciousness, that's what he wanted. He could have easily stayed in Vrindavan. He was very happy looking at the Samadhi of Rupa Goswami, the Bhajan Kutir of Rupa Goswami. And this Krishna consciousness is not meant for any one group of people. Prabhupada says that if you read his books, that's what he hammers in again and again and again. This is not for any one class of people. It's not for only the people of one culture. It's for everyone. And everyone has a chance to because that Nitya Siddha Krishna Bhakti, right? That Krishna Bhakti in an embryonic, dormant form is there in the heart of every living being. So we have this opportunity. There's a really nice temple president in Pune in India, really enthusiastic brahmachari, Radhe Shyam Prabhu. And we were there once, and he was making this announcement in the morning. He was saying that he read in the newspaper that there was some, what they call in India, IIT topper, some brilliant, brilliant student who had just committed suicide. He was like top in all his classes. And he just committed suicide. And he left a note that something like, I just couldn't find any meaning in my life. Everything just seemed meaningless to me. So this wonderful brahmachari temple president was saying, this is our fault. He's saying to all the brahmacharis and everyone there, he's saying, this is our fault that this young man committed suicide because we didn't reach him soon enough to give him this beautiful message of Krishna Bhakti, Srila Prabhupada's beautiful invitation. Like what does Srila Bhakti Siddhanta say in his introduction to the Brahma Samhita? Krishna is ever inviting the fallen conditioned souls to associate with him in pastimes of love. So isn't that beautiful that he was thinking, this is our fault that this young man committed suicide. We didn't reach him in time. So I think that's a beautiful consciousness of a devotee who cares. What else? Anything else? Okay.
I have a kind of a request for you, since we all basically at home during the week we do our own individual sadhana, chanting and reading. So what kind of advice or encouragement would you give all of us for the daily, the radical personalism around our own daily practice with trying to really connect with Krishna?
Yeah, it's a beautiful question. Well, why are we doing it, right? We're doing it for our own purification. Maybe we're doing it because our guru told us, because Prabhupada told us. But most of all, we're doing it to please Krishna. So if we can, have that conversation while we're doing those things. I'm doing this to please you, for your pleasure. And just do it more consciously. Be more conscious, because, as we were just talking, we are never alone. We're always there. There's always this is personalism, right? There's always someone there watching me and waiting for me. Krishna's full in all his pastimes. He's got so many devotees on so many planets worshiping him, but he's feeling this one little lack that you or I haven't come back to him yet. That there's some little thing in you or in me that he's missing, and he's welcoming us back. So to do those practices more consciously. I mean, I think, when you've been doing something for a long time, or even if you haven't been doing it for a long time, it can become mechanical. And then, the rituals are still powerful, even if they're mechanical, but how much more powerful are they if they're done consciously, with deep meditation, with longing, begging Krishna, please show me the way, show me the next step, show me how to remember you, show me how to give me knowledge, show me what I'm doing wrong. Then it takes it to another level of conscious devotional service. How can I please you more? How can I love you more? And then Krishna this is discernment. I think this is what a sincere devotee begs for, that kind of discernment. Show me what I'm doing wrong, because I want to know. I want to know how to do better. So, rituals are great. I walked in the temple this morning. Someone said, oh, there was a ritual. Oh, yeah, Amy said that her son just turned over for the first time. So, in the Krishna book, there's a ritual for that. Mother Yashoda has a ritual when Krishna turns over for the first time. So these rituals are beautiful, and Krishna consciousness is so full of rituals. Our American society is so robbed of rituals in many ways. But what's a ritual? A ritual is like a box. It's your birthday. Happy birthday! And someone brings you a box with ribbons and paper. And you go, thank you so much. And you take off the ribbon, take off the paper, open the box. And if there's nothing there, then you kind of feel like, what? So rituals are kind of like that. The rituals are the ribbon and the paper and the box and all of those things to make it even more special and even more sacred. But if there's no intention inside, then it becomes a little, we hear people say, oh, empty ritual. Hinduism is full of empty rituals. Well, it's empty if that intention isn't there. Although they still have power. To do an arti, even without intention, still has power, but with more intention, it has so much more power. You're doing an arti, you can be praying for everyone in the congregation. Please light the hearts with this light. Please light the hearts of everyone in the congregation. Give them, when you're waving incense, give them the fragrance of the spiritual world. Wash away with the water of the Kansha. You can say, wash away our sins. You can, when you're offering the handkerchief, dry our tears. Whisk away all the material desires that are like flies in my heart. So that's one answer. And association is so important. When maybe we come here on Saturday or on Sunday, and the association we keep is so important. What are you listening to? What are you watching on social media? All this is so important. There's so much garbage, and there's also so much nectar. You can click onto YouTube and see so many beautiful lectures right now, or you can click onto so much useless gossip and criticizing and backbiting and fighting, and it's always our choice. We have free will, right? And who do you want to hang with? Who do you want to keep as your friends? Who do you want to say, I haven't seen him in a while, and that's okay. And then in the Bhagavatam, Prahlad Maharaj's father, Hiranyakashipu himself, said, association is like a crystal stone. So what does that mean? It means like whoever we associate with, it's like a mirror. We're going to be mirroring whoever we hang out with. And sometimes we want to be giving and sharing. So that's a good thing also. But what do I want to take into my own heart and receive deeply? So we have to be conscious in our lives, Monday through Friday. But this is neophyte devotion that I think, oh, Krishna's in the temple. As soon as I walk out the door, I'm on my own, Or sometimes people think, God is everywhere. I don't need to go to the temple. Why should I go to the temple? God is everywhere. So it's like a razor blade, right? You can fall off either side. But it's so beautiful that love is individual, that we have our free will, that Krishna will never force us. I have one friend who lives in Washington. He works for a big, powerful NGO. I met him when he spoke at the White House one time. So he's a very powerful young man, brilliant young man. And he said, he's from India, South India. His father is a life member of ISKCON. And he said to me once, you know what my favorite verse of Bhagavad Gita is? I said, no, what? And he said, the verse where Krishna says, now I've told you everything, now you can do whatever you want. I said, oh, great. So it's our choice, right? To love or to not love, to offer our hearts or not. Anybody else?
Hare Krishna, Rukmini Prabhu. I don't know if you can hear.
Questions coming in from outer.
There-
Okay, Andrea.
Hare Krishna. I just wanted to give my kind of reflection back that I really love the explanation of radical personalism, because I feel like in the United States and in the world, we're seeing that we're going through a mental health crisis that has been exacerbated by the pandemic. And I do agree that I think that radical personalism is the way that not only within ISKCON that we can heal a lot of wounds that are still there, and that wounds that keep happening that push people away from ISKCON, that have people leave and consider themselves not devotees, but also in the world in general. The world in general is going through a mental health crisis. And if we can reflect radical personalism and show this to the world, that can attract so much healing and so many people to ISKCON in amazing ways. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Yeah, show how beloved you are. Everyone should meet a devotee and think, wow, I felt so valued. I felt so heard. I felt so seen. Haridas Prabhu.
Just along the same line, the idea that presenting radical personalism is a very universal, connected, and there's also the more confidential side of presenting the Supreme Personality of Sri Krishna. How do you blend those two in a way that's warm and receptive?
Because sometimes Prabhupada could be quite heavy on the impersonalists in his speaking, but I think we don't have the adhikar to be blasting so much, right? Because in fact, Krishna has his personal and impersonal aspects. I'll tell you a funny story that I was once riding in the back of a car. Sachinandan Swami was in the front, and he just had an exchange with Krishnadas, and he had become friends with Krishnadas, the kirtan singer. And he was kind of hammering on this, personalism that we believe so strongly, that Prabhupada really kind of really was very strong to all of us. And so Krishnadas I was hearing it secondhand from Sachinandan Swami. So he said, he's talking about how the personal aspect is so much more important, and we have to really be personalists. And so he said, then at a certain point, Krishnadas said to him, Sachinandan Swami, you think that God, that we are one and different. I think that we are one and different. And then he said, Sachinandan Swami, can we be friends? That was just kind of a beautiful story. So yeah, I think a key point here is that we don't have the adhikar. We don't have that stature to be calling people rascals and, you know what I mean? Like, just encourage people and try to show them the beauty of Krishna's person. And then acknowledge, yeah, Krishna has his impersonal aspects too. And both are valid. And you can approach him in either way. But if you ask Krishna's opinion, in 12th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, he says the personal one is a little better. I don't know. That's my opinion. There's so many stories. Should I just tell one more story?
Yeah.
Okay. So I remember one story. This is in New York in the early days. And so one man was visiting the temple. He was from India. And he was saying to Srila Prabhupada, Swamiji, your disciples are calling Ramakrishna a rascal. And Prabhupada said, who has said? Who has said? And then and then Prabhupada just sort of dismissed that and said, anyway, what does he say? Because the philosophy here is, if you kill a skunk, your hand gets a bad smell, right? If you kill a skunk, your hand gets a bad smell. So don't destroy the person, but defeat the philosophy that the person is presenting. So he says, so Prabhupada said, so anyway, what does he say? And the man started to expound some of the teachings of this particular guru, And then Prabhupada, point by point, was using his, the path of bhakti to show how you know, how we're one in quality, we're one in interest, we're not one with the Supreme. And it was very artful, very artful, you know. They have a saying in India that you can teach the daughter-in-law by teaching the daughter. You heard that one before? So the daughter-in-law's new at the house and maybe your relationship's not so thick. So if you start to chastise her like someone who first walks in the temple, maybe her feelings will be hurt. So you can teach her by teaching your daughter. So that's sort of an example of Prabhupada doing that, you know, like chastising his disciples. Who has said? And then anyway, okay, well, what does he say? So I think there's an art to sharing Krishna consciousness, but first of all, before the art, there has to be the heart. Okay, thank you all so very much. I don't want to bore you to death and keep you here forever. There's nice prasadam outside. Hare Krishna.
Thank you very much.